In this Tech Bite, we'll be covering all the ways that a subject grade can be entered into the teacher portal. Let's jump right in. Now, in this Tech Bite, I will be demonstrating 3 different examples of how a school can be set up for grade reporting. This first example is just straight subject grades. They are not looking at any skills, standards, or competencies. We're going to start with the more common way of entering in a grade, and then we'll go to the less known or less used. So we're going to start with the gradebook, and we're going to go to our summary grid. And here we have an assignment with several grades here, and we are going to enter in our assignment grades for Chapter 9. So I just start clicking in the first student and entering in their grades. I can see this assignment is worth 100 points. And I can keep doing that. I'm actually clicking from field to field. I could use my arrow keys up and down. I could hit my enter key and enter in grades. You can see here that my quarter average now is a question mark. That indicates that MMS knows that these students have had a new grade entered in and that their total points and point scores have changed, and thus their quarter average needs to be recalculated. We'll recalculate that in just a minute. Let me enter in a few more grades here and one more. So I could enter in each student manually, and that would be fine, but we give you some tools here in the summary grid. If I right-click on any of the assignment score cells, I have some options show up. I can edit the assignment. I can delete the assignment. MMS will allow me to delete an assignment even if it has grades associated with it. Use that one with caution. And also I have the ability to assign the same points or score as to all. So let's take a look at that. The first option here is to enter the same points for all of my students. So if I had an assignment where everybody did really well or everybody did really poorly, but the majority of the grades were the same, I could enter in that value here and then assign the same points with no override. That means those students that have already entered in grades, those grades will remain intact, or I can override and just remove all of the grades that I've already entered in. Where I've already entered some in, I'm going to do this with no override. And all of my students that don't have a grade are now going to receive a grade of 100. Now, it just defaulted to that because that's the point value for this assignment. I could put, 55, or I could put 95. But we're going to go with what it defaulted to, and we're not going to override. It lets me know that it entered in grades for 6 students, so I'm going to close that window. And all the other students that I hadn't entered grades for now have a grade of 100. Let me go and delete some of these here and demonstrate that option again. So I'm going to right-click, and this time I can see that I have 3 students who don't have grades at all. So those grades are officially missing. So I'm going to go to my Assign Same Point Score As to All. And this time, rather than assigning points, I'm going to flag those as missing. And again, I am not going to override because I want to only do this for those 3 missing students. And so there we go. I can see that it's been assigned to those 3 students. I'm going to close my window, and now they are flagged as being missing. Now you notice with missing, it shows up as red. If there was a missing assignment, obviously there wouldn't be a score there. So it does enter in a 0 for that student, and it has an MI next to that grade, and it does negatively impact a student's grade, a missing assignment. We have some other examples here. We have a dropped grade, and you can do that as a score as, or you can assign it individually. So if I go back here, and so I have a student who received a 0 on a chapter test, I can right-click, set that to dropped, and drop will maintain the grade that the student had. So you see another example here where a student received a 65, and I've dropped that score for that student. And if I recalculate, it's going to pull the total points for that assignment from their total points and also remove their points scored. So it no longer has an impact on the student's grade. And the last one I want to do, and I do have an example here, is exempt. So exempt will zero out the grade, or if there's no grade in there, it will put a 0 in for the grade and followed by a hyphen and EX. And just like a drop score, this has no impact on the student's grade as opposed to missing. So the other area where we can enter in grades is through the assignment editor. And the same options are available to you. It's just how you get there. So if I want to enter in grades for my Chapter 7 assignment, I just click on the A+, and it's going to open up a window here, and I can enter in whichever grades I need. I have the same option of assigning the same points or score as to all, and also the required, the missing, dropped, or exempt. Now, I didn't talk about required. When you create an assignment, it automatically defaults the assignment to all grades being required. And here also you have ready access to the teacher note, and this teacher note is specifically for that assignment. It's not the term note, it is the assignment note, and we also give you spell check. The other area where you can enter in grade, if the teacher chooses not to create assignments and have those assignments calculate the term grade, a teacher can go in through the grade book, assign grades, and go into final grade entry. Here you will select your marking period, and then you can enter in the term grade. So in my case, that would be quarter 1. So I could enter in their quarter grade as well as entering in their 4 comment codes that are available. Actually, the last one is going to be the class attendance, so I really don't want to put a comment code in there. And then I also have access to the term note for my students. And those are the only options that this teacher has with this setup, this configuration. So I'm going to log out of my teacher. Here, this is my middle school teacher. Now I'm going to log in as my grade school teacher. Now my grade school teacher is set up for skills. And those skills are associated with the assignments, and the way I have this configured in this school, those skills grades will be determined by the assignment grade. So it behaves a little bit differently. So if I go into my summary grid and I have my homework assignment here, if I click in, let's see, let's pick on Joshua and just enter in any number. So I just randomly hit 2 number keys, and it's going to open up this window. Now, this is based on 100 points, and if I enter in a 99, and my next student, I'm going to enter in an 88, and this one I'm going to do a 50. you'll notice that question marks are showing up here for my associated skills. That's because they are going to be graded based on some averaging that I have set up in the staff portal for the assignment grade. So I'm going to compute standard grades, and so now I have my 99 now is outstanding for all of my skills, 88 is satisfactory, and the 50 is unsatisfactory. This same method is open, is available if I were to enter in grades through my assignments. The same thing is going to happen. And I also have my final grade entry where I can come in and enter in the term grade for the subject grade for my term. So these were all calculated by the assignments, but if I wanted to, I could enter in what their quarter one grade would be, as well as entering in comment codes and the term note field for that student. This TechBite is not going to cover how you would enter in either skills or competency grades or standard grades, but under the skills grades menu, I do have the ability to view and enter in subject grades, very similar to what we just saw here with the final grade entry. Here I have my quarter grade and then my comment codes and my note field. The last example we are going to see is a school that is set up for competencies. Competencies are different than what standards or skills are. In the case of competencies, when I create my assignments need to be attached to or linked to competencies, and those competencies will be graded, added together, and create the assignment grade. So the competencies is what will drive the term grade for the student. If an assignment doesn't have competencies associated with it, it will not be taken into consideration as part of the calculation for the term grade. So if I go to my summary grid, and again I'm going to take my assignment, oh I don't want this course, sorry. Let's go to my geometry class here. And if I click on any grade field, type in a number, just like with my standards or skills, another window is going to open up, but this one's going to be slightly different. Here I can see I have 3 competencies associated with my assignment, and rather than giving an assignment grade and having that assignment grade feed into the standards grades, or in this case competency, I'm going to grade my competencies. So this assignment is worth 100 points, and each of the 3 competencies are worth 33, 33, and 34 points. So I'm going to enter in my grades, and I'm just using my arrow keys to get from cell to cell. And you can see now the question marks are forming on the assignment grade. And if I click on Compute Assignment Scores, those 3 numbers are going to be added together, and it's going to determine my assignment grade. Now if I right-click, I am still going to have that same assigned same points scored as to all, and also be able to set an assignment as missing, dropped, or exempt.
I can go into skill grades and go to the View Enter Skill Grades area. Under here, there are 3 ways to enter the grades. We're going to start by doing the student grid. In here, I have the ability to go in and enter for a student. When I click on the pencil in front of a student's name, it's going to give me a list of the skills related to the course that I'm in this case reading, and an area where I can enter the grade. Now in this case, the first, second, or third, or fourth grade that's showing here is which grade of the year it is and not the grade level of the student. So what I'm going to do is I can see what grade they had in the first marking period, and I can at this point just drop the list to see what they are at the second marking period. And in this case, I can just pick from the list, and depending on the skill depends on the list of grades I'm going to see. Now in that case, I just dropped the list and I entered it, but I can also right-click here and say I want to view select from the allowed skill grades. The advantage of doing that is I get to see the level and what the description is that goes with it. So I'd see that 3 is my third grade level. I would highlight it and save it. Now if I do the same thing for uses phonetic clues, when I look at the view select for allowed grades for this one, I get a different set. So I'm going to have a plus sign for the strength in a particular area. I have a square bracket, a CK for satisfactory progress in an area, and 2 dashes for a weakness in an area. Now this bracket CK is actually going to print as a check mark on my skills report card. So that makes it nice to be able to put that in. So I'm going to select that and save. And I can continue doing that for each of my classes or each of the students. I can also right-click here and I can print the allowed skill grades. So that's going to very nicely give me a list of what these are. Now at this point, I can go straight to the printer, or I can export to either a PDF, a text, comma, separated value, or comma delimited file, or into Excel. So it does give me that option. When you go to hit the export at this point, depending on what your browser settings are, depends on whether or not you're going to get the option to save the file and where. Some of them, they only do it where it goes straight into your downloads area. Others, you can set it up so that you can say which way you'd like to work with it. Now it does say print allowed standard grades, but it isn't specifying per se that this is the one for this particular area. So I might want to label that it's the group SUBG versus the one before, which was my grade level. So I might want to label it a little differently. So I'm going to cancel out of here and not save it, and I'm just going to hit the X in the corner to close out my preview. Now I can come back and I can just click here and select from the list. Now if I enter, it's going to drop me down to the next one. And at this point, I could say type in a plus mark because they've done better at recognizing basic vocabulary. And I can just go down the list, and if I do a square bracket to start, it's going to put that in for me. So it gives me the ability to go in and change what I've done for this student. Once I've finished with this student, I can click the collapse, the up arrow, and then I can go select another student to either review or see what they have. This apply default grade to all gives me the ability to use whatever is my default grade and apply it to all of the students in all of the skills. Now in this system, my default grade happens to be a blank because we want to force the teachers to select something. But that default grade could have been the check mark. It just depends on what the school opts to set up. Now if I hit the check mark or the square here, I can collapse or expand everyone. So I can look at everybody's grades and then be able to scroll up and down to verify what I'm putting in. Or I can check it again and actually uncheck it and collapse everyone. So that's one way to enter my skill grades. The next way is I'm going to go under skill grades, the view enter skill grades, and this time I'm going to do the skill in a grid. What that does is instead of going from one student and all of the skills, I'm now going to go from the skill and go to all students. So I've highlighted that I want to do my reading level, and I click on the View Enter Skill Grades. Now at this point, I'm going to get a list of all the students in the class, and I can again just click on the list and put in what level they're at, or I can right-click and I can assign the same grade to all. Now I do have that View Select from Allowed Skill Grades like I had when I did it from the student side. But what's nice with this assign same grade to all is it gives me the ability to go in and say, okay, I want to give everybody grade 2 as what level of reading they're at. Below that are two options. One is to assign grades to all, but I don't want to overwrite what's already there, which means that these two grade 3 levels are going to stay. If I said assign grades to all with overwrite, then I would overwrite those 3s and they would become 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and do the no overwrite. So it's going to go through and modify those. Now when it comes back, it'll have filled in the grade for all of those students, which makes it really handy. And at this point, I go to select new skill, and I can pick another skill that I want to work with, view enter, and come back in and work with those. So it makes it very nice to be able to put in the skills that I have here. And I can again assign the same grade to all, give everybody the check mark, do it with the no overwrite, and then work from there. Or I can say overwrite all, not worry about what was already there, and then change it afterward. So it modified it for 17 students. It put everybody with a check mark, and now I can come in and modify the ones that I'd like. Brandy made progress this time, and Joe isn't doing quite as well. So I can go ahead and modify what's here. The grid order by default is in student name order, but I can change it to homeroom, year of grad, or ID order. Now we're not having to show the ID at the moment, but it will shuffle the students and put them in that order. In either case, it's going to tell me how many grades are missing, what the overall average is for the class, and whether or not anyone is not evaluated, which means that it's either a blank or that the grade isn't there. So there is a difference where it's trying to make that determination. So those are two ways to put in the grades. We go in under reading instead of reading. If I want to go down to study habits, I'm going to show you another way to enter the grades. And in here, I'm going to go under the skill grades, the view enter grades, and this time I'm going to go down to the student list. In this case, I'm going to get a list of the students, and there's a button here where I can edit the grades. So if I want to go ahead and do that, and let's change this back to the student name order, I can go ahead and click on the student. And in this case, it's going to be a little bigger view than I had before. I can still put in the grades as I go down. So it just gives me that option to be able to come in. Now my skills are different because I'm now in my study habits. And as I scroll down, I can see more study habits that they're working on. And then when I get through with the study habits, I'm now going to come into the conference requested or promotion doubtful type of skill group. And I have here an area where I can put in a teacher note. And I can say how well Brandy's doing. And I can put that in. Now I can also hit the spell, and that's going to do a spell check for me. So it lets me know that it doesn't know who Brandy is, and I can say ignore that one, and that's going to say I'm not too sure what this, and yes, I can change it. And I can go ahead and say go ahead and change it. And that brings me back out, and I can continue going here. The next one's areas where I have a conference requested or a promotion is doubtful, and that's an area where I can put a double X in if I wanted to do a conference or not. So it's a different group depending on what I'm working with. At this point, I can go just straight into the next student, and it's going to bring up whoever is that next student, or I can do a new student from the list. So either of these are going to work. Now with those notes, the other thing, by the way, that I can do here that I couldn't do in the other two areas is I can actually go in and look at their report card just by clicking the little button that's in front of it that lets me preview that. So it just gives me a different way to be able to go in and look. If I go back into my skill grades and I do the skills by the skill here in the grid, if I was doing my notes, I could come in and say, oh, here's the teacher note. Let's go ahead and do the view enter. Now, because I put in a note for Brittany, it gives me an area where I can see that. And if I hover, I can see the name and I can see that, oops, I goofed a little bit. I put the name in as Brandy when I should have done it as Brittany. To change that, I just click on the note area. It's going to bring it up, and I can double click and type in the correct name. Now you can highlight the area that's here and right click, and you can do a copy or a paste. So I could have a Word document elsewhere, come in here, right click and say I want to paste. So it does give me that capability to bring that in. And at the bottom, it's going to give me how many words and how many characters that I'm working with. And the reason it gives me this notification on words and characters is there might be a limitation on how many characters are going to print on the report card. So having an idea here of how many characters is really going to help me try and keep my notes succinct. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I can continue working in with that. Now you can also see that note if I go back into the View Enter Grades by Student, and it just becomes that it's in a different column. So if I click on Brittany again, I'm going to be able to see, and here's the note, so I can see what they've done so far. And again, if I hover over it, I'll see what that note is. So those are all ways that I can enter the skill grades. If I go in under the skill grades, there is also the ability to print a verification list. What that allows me to do is I can come in here for, in this case, my study habits. And I can say I want to see for the second term and go ahead, and now I could use my control key and print both first and second term. If I go ahead and print, it's going to print for these, and it's set up to do a new page for each student, so I can see what sort of grades I've put in so far. And as I go forward, I can see each student on their own page and see what sort of progress they've made. To change this to another course, I just go up to the top, click the course that I want to work with, so maybe I want to do math this time, and again see first and second term. And when I print, I'm going to be able to see for each student how I've scored. So it's a great way to see what I've done and see how well, did I miss somebody that, oh, I need to put in scores for Brittany here in math? And I can see the other information that's out there. So that's how you enter your skill grade in the teacher portal. We thank you very much and hope you found this helpful.